Welcome to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. Unlike other shows about marketing and growing a private practice, only the Private Practice Elevation Podcast takes you into the peaks and valleys of successful practice owners to give you the lessons they learned and the proven strategies that you can apply to your own private practice, helping you reach the next level in your business. I'm your host, Daniel Fava. Today, we're diving into a topic that's creating a lot of conversation in the therapy world, and that's AI in therapy. You've probably experimented with AI tools like ChatGPT for writing emails or brainstorming ideas, but what happens when AI starts moving into the clinical side of private practice? Where's the line between helpful support and ethical concern? And how can therapists use AI in a way that actually enhances care instead of replacing the human connection that makes therapy so powerful? In today's episode, I'm joined by Maria, co-founder of Mentalyc, to talk about how AI can responsibly support clinicians, especially when it comes to documentation, progress tracking, reducing admin overwhelm, while keeping therapists firmly at the center of the work. If you've been curious about AI, but also curious and cautious, this conversation will help you think more clearly about what's helpful, what's risky, and what likely is coming next. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. A year from today, what would your dream private practice look like? Would you spend less time chasing claims or only working with clients who value your skill set? What if you had more time for yourself? Alma empowers you to confidently accept insurance backed by an all-in-one EHR that simplifies scheduling, documentation, and day-to-day practice operations. Your dream practice is closer than you think. To learn more about Alma and receive 2 free months, visit helloalma.com/elevation. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode. Daniel here, and all right, well, welcome to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. Maria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dig into today's topic with you and learn a little bit more about you. We have just connected, through email, and so I love this part about the podcast. I get to talk to amazing people from all over the world and learn from them. So let's kind of just start a little bit with tell us a little bit more about your story. So who you are, what you do, and how did you get into what you're doing now and in this space of helping therapists?
Sure. So I'm originally born and raised in Poland, and that's where I went to therapy as a teenager, like 15 years ago. I'm 32 now. um, and that was a very confusing experience for me and my family. I had an eating disorder. We didn't know which therapist would be the fitting one for me. There are all those, modalities and all sorts of labels therapists have that for a client are not necessarily understandable. So I basically met 5 different therapists and 2 psychiatrists in that process, like for a couple of years till I got healed. So that was the experience that basically formed my interests, I guess, and like passion for therapy. Mm, I have discovered like a lot of problems and also like struggles that therapists experience as well as patients. So I was very like curious. I read a lot of books. I talked to other like clients of therapists and other like therapists. Um, and that's what led over the years to basically me building Mentalyc, which is a tool that helps therapists write notes.
Mhm. Awesome. And how did you get kind of into sort of the technology space of of all of what you're doing?
So I am basically, like I say, by trade, a business person. So I
Mm,
went to business schools. I studied finance. Then I studied like in a business school, like let's say MBA in London. Um, and I actually started my very first company also as a teenager. So it's now basically like not the first one of mine. I had actually a couple of companies. I was always very actually passionate about problem solving,
yeah.
inspiring people to like make the world a better place. Very cliche, but but true.
It's great.
And and I guess like eventually I managed to kind of combine those passions for entrepreneurship and like something that is very like dear to me and close to my heart. So that's how Mentalyc started.
Yeah, and before we get into, specifically talking about how AI can responsibly support clinicians, just tell us just briefly, what does Mentalyc do? Like, what are some of the problems that you all are solving?
So we started about 4 years ago as an AI scribe. I basically was like researching the field of mental health like since a while. I also like tried to build a different solution that is helping patients navigate the care. And then it just emerged to me that note taking is such a big problem. That was also before the whole like ChatGPT boom.
Yeah,
So it was unobvious that there will be such technology emerging and that we could actually solve this problem like in a completely different way. So I was just like very curious, like if there is a way. Then I met my co-founder in an accelerator for startups, who actually has the machine learning background. So we sort of like started ideating in the direction of how we can leverage AI to help with notes. Um, and that way, the first like AI scribe got launched. Now, 4 years in, we have actually a lot of other AI like features, like for example, tracking of progress. We can detect a lot of like for example symptoms or progress towards goals from session data, so that the therapist doesn't have to send any questionnaires to clients, and it's all automatically tracked. We also analyze therapeutic alliance, so we give sort of like extra feedback to the clinician, just sort of like spotting, let's say, some missed opportunities, showing some patterns. Mm. So yeah, that's the AI scribe plus extra insights and analytics.
yeah. Wow, very cool, very interesting. Yeah, I know that a lot of when it comes to AI, I think a lot of folks are now getting very familiar with obviously like ChatGPT and oh yeah, I might be able to use that to help me write blog posts or marketing emails and plan for things and stuff like that, which is certainly a great use case. But for you all, what you're doing is really taking AI and helping support the clinicians. So what about, if folks start to think about that way and using it in that way? I know that some people might get kind of worried about ethics, privacy, stuff like that. So like w- what what do you think AI should be used for, should not be used for, when it comes to the clinical side of running a private practice and therapy?
So AI is generally very good in pattern recognition, I would say,
Yeah.
because it's an algorithm after all, right? Like mathematical
Hmm.
being.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful with processing large volume of data, which can help us spot all sorts of patterns. It also can lead to very good, for example, summarization. It's so those large language models are trained on processing text, and summarizing is one of their strengths. So note taking is definitely a very like big, I would say, opportunity. Also, all of this like tracking of progress and so on. Also, some other things that we don't do, like for example, optimizing your schedule. Let's say writing automated messages to clients, um, to, for example, like optimize no shows, like spend less time in practice, and so on. So generally, all of the admin. What it should not do, I believe, or I mean, it's a controversial topic, but I am generally very skeptical myself when it comes to AI therapy. It's
Yeah.
like a very big debate. I would say, like I see that communities of therapists, like I see a lot of emotions recently when it comes to this topic.
Yeah.
I also frequently go to conferences, so I see actually that clinicians like talk about it, on stages in their own events.
Hmm.
Mm, and I mean, like there are probably cases where it is better than not having therapy, like when it comes to light cognitive interventions or psychoeducation. For people who cannot, let's say, afford therapy, it might work for some people. But generally, I think it's actually quite dangerous.
Yeah. Hmm.
And especially for people with like more complex trauma or uh,
Hmm.
any tendencies to be dependent on something, I think
Yeah.
it's very, very risky. So I would say like clinical work, ideally not.
Yeah, absolutely. But there, it sounds like what you all are doing is using AI to kind of bring like a new level of the work that the therapist is doing. So obviously note taking, which is sometimes one of those difficult things to get to. I'm not a therapist myself, but I obviously talk to many, and my wife is one. And so, getting to that note taking. But I like what you said about kind of summarizing. I know for myself, when I am in meetings with people, I'm very thankful for the note taking apps that we have now and how AI can help me summarize meetings because for me and my personality, when I'm getting lots of information, I can get overwhelmed by that. And so I like being able to then go back and see sort of those summaries. So like my wheels start turning for that. And it sounds like you're able to then take those summaries and the clinician can then obviously, use those as feedback and help to, obviously provide a better service. I mean, it sounds like that's the goal, correct?
Yeah, we generally are definitely a team therapist. We
Mm-hmm.
believe that they are like basically the best, let's say, medium of providing care. So yeah, note taking is definitely one of those things that sort of like stand in the way, I would say, of the like quality of alliance. Because if the
Yeah.
therapist is like, worried that they will forget something, trying to jot something down, losing
Yeah.
this contact, um, a note taker can basically just remove this, like allow full presence in session. So we hope that it can
Mm-hmm.
improve the quality of care as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I could never be a therapist because I would likely forget what happened in the last session. So like having a note taker would be absolutely key for me and just my own personality. It, and one thing that I also want to ask like a follow-up question on is you mentioned like the admin support and using AI for admin support, which I think is great. We actually just had an episode come out just this week about AI chatbots, but also like using them for an intake process. And I'm curious to get your take on, I know sort of the flip side of that could be that you lose the human element, and so you mentioned like follow-ups and making sure like, there's communications around no-shows and stuff. So how do you all make sure that you don't lose the human touch when AI is crafting these, follow-up messages and emails and things to patients and clients?
So we again we don't do that in our software, but this is something that even I use myself a lot. Like I actually use AI as sort of like my operating system. Let's call it that way. So AI is doing a lot of those things also for me to like, for example, check what people I don't know, wrote me, what emails I got, writes me a
Yeah.
summary, maybe pre-writes an email, and then
Mm-hmm.
I would usually just like check it maybe before sending it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a lot of like very I would say, like, it gives us satisfaction to do a lot of those small things that we can check off. But
Yeah.
then before I realized half a day's passed and we didn't get to the actual work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I believe for therapists, it also like basically should work this way. And I see some early movement in some of the newer EHRs in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
where there is like a chat interface and you can say, for example, like something came up, I cannot have sessions this afternoon, just cancel my clients, reschedule them, find the right slot.
Yeah.
Uh, I believe, like, as an idea at least, it sounds great, but indeed there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely the risk of it, like,
Right.
hallucinating, doing something off.
Right. Right. So it sounds like Mentalyc really focuses on the documentation, the note-taking side of things. Is that correct?
We actually, like, as our mission and vision and what I originally sort of wanted us to solve as a problem, we are focusing mostly on the clinical side of therapy, but not replacing the clinician, but enhancing their work, right? So we focus a bit less on the, let's say, other admin than the notes. Notes for us are a special type of admin because they contain a lot of clinical, very rich information, which can be
Mhm.
like surfaced back to the clinician to help them like improve session, remember what exactly happened, spot the patterns. So we are very passionate about basically leveraging this very rich data source to improve the quality of care.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And I know that you mentioned in some of the resources and things that you have, you talk about insurance ready documentation. So I'm just curious to hear a little bit more. Like what does insurance ready documentation mean, and how does that support the clinician?
So keeping up with insurance requirements has always been very difficult for clinicians and understandably because there are so many different payers and different states have different regulations and payers also come up with all sorts of new adjustments. Um, mostly they intend to pay less, right, for care, because that's their business model. So when like there are kind of several layers of this compliance. The most sort of like basic one is that the notes are even there, which
Hmm.
is not obvious.
Yeah.
Somehow, and that they have like really basic things. So the CPT codes, the like the date of service, like when the session started, ended, the signature, and so on. But there are also some more tricky parts to it. Like for example, the famous medical necessity, which is something that if it's missing in session, the insurance can reject the payment. Right, there will be a clawback. Um, and this is actually like we see that many clinicians who are actually great in clinical work are not necessarily great being scribes.
Hmm.
And even if you basically can identify that the client like really needs help and you know that it's justified, the medical necessity requires like very thorough documentation of symptoms following the DSM-5 framework,
Hmm.
justifying the impairments. Um, so like the way it needs to be documented is actually very academic somehow and
Yeah, I
not
bet.
like,
Yeah.
taught necessarily at like therapy schools. Mm, so we basically like take care that all of those boxes are checked and clinicians don't have to worry about
Hmm.
not being paid for their work.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. Well, when it comes to AI, obviously because of the nature of what you all are creating, the problems you're solving, yeah, it seems like you all are kind of on the forefront of AI, how we can use it to, support clinicians. Where do you see things kind of going as the next step for both AI, like, broadly, just in our world, in our lifetime, but also for you and Mentalic?
Mm, AI is definitely changing the world like very fast. It's actually quite crazy if you think about it. If we compare it to like previous revolutions, I don't know, internet,
Yeah.
electricity, this one is really transforming things very fast. One way we can see that is, for example, the number of competitors that we have. Like when we started, we were basically the very first scribe for therapy.
Hmm.
Then we had like maybe two more competitors, and now I think we're like almost 50. So it's very interesting how companies just like pop out like overnight because
Yeah.
there's new I don't know if your audience is familiar with it, but a very like famous let's say activity nowadays, vibe coding. So basically you can tell AI that you would like certain app to be built and it can be done very quickly.
Yeah.
Mm, it also carries a lot of risks, of course, because those apps are usually not very secure and no one exactly knows how they're built.
Yeah.
Um, but that is definitely one thing that we see like happening a lot. That AI writes code very well, very fast, and is very cheap to create new products. We also definitely see on our team and also when it comes to our clinicians that everyone just goes to AI to ask about everything. So see clinicians asking about ideas for next session, for
Hmm.
homeworks, for creating worksheets. So I think this trend will definitely continue.
Yeah.
In startup world, we actually use AI like more as I mentioned, right, to like kind of control our computers,
Hmm.
which is not yet what happens in the mental health space. But I think healthcare always is like a little bit later if you look at trends, right? Like
Mm.
after the other industries because of all the
Right.
security and so on.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that those trends of like exactly telling AI I have the sessions tomorrow, I am not available, and it will like arrange all of your work. Code clicking is definitely coming. I definitely think the AI therapy trend also will basically not stop.
Mm.
But I can only hope that in the next couple of years it will just basically be somehow, I don't know, regulated and
Yeah.
generally helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I know that it's, like you said, it's a controversial topic, but it seems most folks I speak to are against AI therapy for obvious reasons, and I think that to me it's encouraging because I think that you just can't replace that human connection, and sitting with someone and going through therapy. Um, there was
And still
Go ahead.
the I like don't get me wrong, I'm not like maybe against it in every case. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
great if you have, for example, like a lighter, let's say, problem, like maybe like an interpersonal conflict, and you want to like reframe your
Right.
thoughts or get some like different perspectives on it. Then it's great, and I think it's can be an amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
I that there is a bit of this risk because we have like misaligned incentives in this industry, right? We have, let's say, payers who want to like pay as little as possible. We have some huge
Mm-hmm.
platforms for therapy that want to keep people in therapy and not have users go away. So healing is not in their interest, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth, right? And then AI also has those properties of sort of being trained to be our like assistant. So it
Mm-hmm.
always like, agrees with us,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not what you want from your therapist, right? So
Right.
I think kind of like the whole, let's say, like circumstances of trying to make therapy cheaper, trying to have people get addicted to AI, and
Yeah.
AI always like making you feel like you're right rather than challenging you. That I
Mm-hmm.
think is dangerous,
Yeah.
but sometimes it can be very useful.
Right. Absolutely. But you mentioned earlier just how like yeah, there's so many companies that are just springing up all over the place, and like it's every day. Like if I'm on Instagram, I see a new ad for some. It's always AI related, and it's always just like something new. Like oh my gosh, they just keep happening. I'm just curious to hear like what are some of the things that you all are doing to differentiate differentiate yourself, in the marketplace.
That's a very like multi-layered question. We
I
could
bet.
go all the way from branding, marketing,
I know.
product features, but generally we maybe we are in a way like a little bit different than most of the startups out there. We, for example, didn't raise any VC funding, and that's also like on purpose, because we really wanted to like get to the bottom of this like therapy data and how to make it better. Like also to large degree driven by my personal curiosity, like what actually helped me in my own therapy and how to find a better care, like at the right time, the right care that you need, right? This all of those things I believe we can actually like uncover from the data. So we're very passionate about the like also let's say like the science aspect to that and how to improve care. So we're also, to be honest, somehow like not maybe very much like trying to keep up with the FOMO. You just see a lot of those competitors, but they usually look shiny on the surface. But if you really
Yeah.
and try to do the notes, you will see that there is like a different depth to the clinical understanding. But it's also definitely very difficult, and that's maybe like more of your market, your expertise, right? Like all the websites also like can be built much quicker nowadays. We
Yeah.
also competitors just like show up, copy our page, like sometimes one to one with different colors.
Yeah. We've had that happen. Yeah. It's crazy.
So so it is definitely very crazy, and
Yeah.
so we just try to sort of like not really focus on this too much because it's I guess
Yeah.
not very
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah. Just kind of keep your head down and do great work at the end of the day. I think that's what matters. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maria, for joining me. Why don't you just share a little bit more about how people can learn a little more about you and Mentalyc and, how you all are helping therapists?
So the best place I guess is our website, Mentalyc.com. We also have like all sorts of social media, all of the things that it's necessary to have nowadays.
Yeah.
So if you just look for Mentalyc, which is spelled as mental YC, you will definitely find us.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes for this episode so folks can check that out. Thank you so much for your time. It was great to meet you, Maria, and to chat with you.
Likewise, Daniel. Take care.
Well, special thanks to Maria for this conversation and for joining me. I hope that this got some wheels turning for you, whether you're using AI already or thinking about getting into it. I think one of the key things that she shared, or I think one of the greatest use cases I think for AI in therapy is that idea of documentation and being able to, understand those patterns that may be going on for your clients, as well as being able to submit those insurance claims. Like she said, there's so many ins and outs and I'm not a therapist myself, admittedly, so I don't actually fully get it, but I know a little bit about it, obviously. But there's so much that you need to do, and that could save you so much time instead of having that back and forth. Make sure that those claims are paid out. Why not use AI to really make sure that your notes are solid for that? So solid tip there, and I know that is something that Mentalyc can help you all out with. So check out the show notes where we have link up for their website and check them out. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if you need help with your website, copywriting, SEO, AI optimization so that you can reach your ideal clients, we would love to help you out with Private Practice Elevation. So head over to privatepracticeelevation.com/kickoff, where you can schedule a free 15-minute call. We can talk about your goals, what you're looking to do, and we can come up with a plan for you to help you reach those goals. Well, thanks so much for listening. Now go elevate your practice. I'd like to thank Alma for sponsoring this episode of the Private Practice Elevation podcast. A year from today, what would your dream private practice look like? Would you spend less time chasing claims or only working with clients who value your skill set? What if you had a network to reach out to for questions or free continuing education? What if you had more time for yourself? Alma empowers you to confidently accept insurance backed by an all-in-one EHR that simplifies scheduling, documentation, and day-to-day practice operations. With a network of engaged providers and free CE resources, Alma makes it easy for you to build the practice of your dreams on your terms. Alma believes that when therapists get the support they need, mental health care gets better for everyone. Learn more about Alma at helloalma.com/elevation. Your dream practice is closer than you think. Get started now and receive 2 free months at helloalma.com/elevation.